I call this meeting of the Committee on Housing, Finance, and Policy to order. Let it be known that we have quorum. Welcome to committee, everybody. We have just a couple bills on the agenda today, but first order of business, I'm looking for approval of last meeting's minutes.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the minutes from February 19th, 2025.
Representative Nash moves approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, we'll move in. We have two bills today from Representative Myers, and I believe we are going to be sending these to taxes today. But we are going to, I know I've been working with the bill author on this. He's going to kind of present roughly on House File 177. Very similar to 178, we'll be doing two separate motions for each bill, but most of his discussion and testimony will be inside of House File 177. So with that, I'll make a motion that we refer House File 177 to the Committee on Taxes. And with that, Representative Myers, to your bill.
Thank you, Chair Igo, Lead Howard. Today we're going to talk a little bit about, housing options and opportunities. We're going to talk about these a little bit together. So House File 177 and House File 178. Is brought forward to bring those options to address the lack of supply or the housing inventory that we see statewide, while also working to address some of the affordability, especially for first-time home buyers. We heard a lot in this committee about, what was the age? I'm trying to remember if it was 38 that people were getting into their first home. And this is a way to, run a parallel track with some of the other good stuff that we're doing here to address, affordability of single-family homes as well as multifamily homes, duplexes, triplexes. It gives us some good diversity for the options that people are looking for, people that are starting out, young families. Again, I'm trying to think back, 38, got married at 30, had 2 kids at the time. So, at that time, you need something that's going to have adequate space for you. So what this bill does, trying to target that, lower to middle income earners, and it sets a cap at 165, which actually I'd like to move my amendment. I probably should have done that first. Sorry.
Representative Myers was waiting for that to your amendment.
So I'd like to move the A1 amendment to get it into the, form I would like for the committee to review.
The amendments before us, please explain your amendment.
So what this amendment does addresses, initially I had a much higher level on here. This is bringing down that exemption amount, and then it's also ensuring that we find that way to pass these savings on from the builders to the homeowners. That's the extent of that amendment. Yep.
Any discussion of the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To your bill.
Continuing on here, as I said, this is targeting those, if you look at a $500,000 home, the research I did, roughly a third of that is going to go towards materials. And what this bill does is giving a sales tax exemption to those materials. So if you have a $500,000 house, roughly $165,000 would be exempt from sales tax if and the numbers drop. So I capped it at that 500, knowing that, if you're looking at a $400,000 house, you're still going to get that exemption. So it's hoping that we can build those, $300,000-$400,000 houses. I think we've seen enough charts that are missing for young families. This is something to address the need right now. There is a sunset clause in there to 2033. So this will give us a little bit of time to address this. That being said, I don't know. I think we maybe have 1 or 2 testifiers.
Looks like we have one testifier on there. If you're ready, we can bring your testifiers up. All right, so first on the list then will be Mark Foster. Welcome back to committee, and please introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Igo, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to join you this afternoon. My name is Mark Foster, Vice President of Legislative and Political Affairs for Housing First Minnesota. We're a trade association of nearly 1,000 members of the home building industry that have one goal in mind: advancing home ownership opportunities for all Minnesotans. Our members build the American dream across the state, building thousands of homes each year. We'd like to thank Representative Myers for both these bills before you today and for this outside-the-box type thinking as we address our housing supply and affordability issues across the state. Home buyers are getting squeezed, and it's truly an all-hands-on-deck moment for housing. I asked one of my builders about the potential cost savings this language could create for home buyers. He ran the numbers, and based off a current model home that he's working on, which is a 1,600 square foot Rambler with a finished basement. So sales tax is currently collected on the lumber, windows, shingles, cabinets, millwork, appliances, lighting, sheetrock, and a few more smaller items within that house. So with all of that in mind, the potential cost savings with the removal of sales tax for that house would run about $9,000 to $10,000. While $10,000 may not seem like a ton of money, please keep in mind that for every $1,000 in cost savings, approximately 2,500 more Minnesota families can afford that home. So a $10,000 reduction would mean 25,000 more families would be able to afford that mortgage and would have a shot at home ownership. The one concern I did mention to Representative Myers this morning with the language in the amendment from lines 1.14 to 1.15 is that it can be difficult to fully articulate the exact sales tax when a purchase agreement is written, especially if it's 4 to 6 months out from when the completion of the home. So we'd like to continue to work with Representative Myers in the committee on that language. Largely, the building community doesn't want to get necessarily caught in between the buyers and then the sales tax exemption. We'd love to see the language progress, but like I said, we don't want to get caught in between. So put the home buyers at the center of this language. We all know that money's tight around here at the moment, but an initiative like this would help to showcase how the state is prepared to do everything and anything it can to address our housing needs. So thank you again for the opportunity to testify in support of these bills.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Any questions for our testifier? All right, seeing none, we'll go into, is there anyone from the public that wishes to testify? All right, we'll go to member discussion then on the bill. Representative Rauer. I did.
All right. Thank you, Chair. And this is not going to be a grilling, as we talked about beforehand, just so you know. I could have missed this, so I needed another minute, but since there weren't any other questions, I jumped in. Taking a look at this, is it my understanding correct that this could still be a benefit for somebody building a more expensive home? So I don't see like an income limit or a cost of the home total value price limit on it. Is that correct?
Representative Myers.
Chair, thank you, Representative Rauer.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so I first want to give a big shout out to nonpartisan staff that worked with me on this, and Alex is coming up. She's been great. The purpose of that amendment was because when this was first drafted, to be honest, the way it was drafted, you could have built a $1.4 million house and gotten the benefit, and that's not the intent of the bill. So what it is doing, and you can correct me, is trying to cap it so that you would not receive the benefit above that $500,000.
Okay.
Representative Rauer.
Just a follow-up, thank you, Chair. So my only comment is I like the idea. I think there could possibly be some more work on figuring out a way to target just the very typical starter home from being built. I see you have a cap on how much that tax exemption will go towards, but also would like to see a little bit more in there on ensuring that it's going to promote our starter homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Myers.
Chair, can I follow up with that?
Absolutely.
Again, from the research, that I saw, I really tried to take the information for suburban starter homes, which is the information from last year when I had this bill was around 460. I think that's gone up to 475. So I was trying to kind of hit a sweet spot of, suburban families starting out as well as, across the entire state to give an opportunity. But yeah, I'd love to continue to have conversations. Thank you.
Is there any further questions of the bill or bill author? Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Myers. And maybe I missed this in the first couple of minutes, but in just kind of reading over the bill, I had wanted a little bit more clarity. So the number 165 that you selected, that's based now on current research about what would qualify more in the starter home space for building or for the price of the home?
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Bajaj. So I took $500,000 as the top end to build a house from the research, with several builders that I talked to. They said about a third of that cost is the materials, which a third of that's going to be the 165. So that was kind of my cap.
Okay.
That's why we went forward with that amendment.
Okay.
Representative Agbaje.
All right. Well, that's helpful to know that's the cost of the materials. And then I guess just another clarifying question in terms of where the benefit of this tax exemption is actually going to be. I read it a couple of times and I was trying to figure out, I feel like the purpose is meant to be the home buyer. And there's a lot of language in the amendment that talks about the home buyer. And so if that's true, I think that's very helpful. I guess I just want to know, particularly for first-time home buyers, usually when there's a lot of funding that could go to first-time home buyers, there's a lot of requirements that they have to meet. And so I don't see those types of requirements in this language. And I'm just wondering if you are open to including those types of requirements or what your thoughts are on that.
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. The intent, and again, I'll have nonpartisan staff follow up if I'm incorrect. We're trying to ensure the qualifying piece is first-time home buyers, and I think the language covers that in here as it's defined. We're trying to find the best mechanism because we already have high interest rates. We already have people having a tough time trying to come up with down payments. Talking with builders. I don't want to put it on the final homeowner to then have to try to come up with those funds, then go back and get it. The goal for this isn't more of those custom homes. It's maybe getting those builders to invest ahead of time on model homes to be built, to invest that money to get them to build it ahead of time. So they're the ones that are going to upfront the cost for it. They will then go and find those qualified buyers to then grab their information, which I think will help us with some reporting and see how effective this may be if, we move forward with it, and then they can be reimbursed with it. But that is some language that we're still trying to work on a little bit.
Okay.
Representative Agbaje.
Yeah, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly then, so the builders would be building the very type of homes that could go for kind of that income level of first-time home buyers that we're sort of going for. And then as they're building, they would then be the ones to find the buyers. So the buyers would then have the ultimate benefit of the tax exemption. Is that correct?
Representative Myers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes.
Okay. And then my last question and comment, Chair.
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Chair, is kind of getting back to this whole thing about first-time homebuyers, right? So I think it's sort of hard to figure out kind of who they are, right? And a lot of programs that we do for them end up having them either self-attest that they're a first-time homebuyer, and then they can show that through either financial statements. Sometimes there's also like home ownership, finance education courses that we have them take, right? Just to make sure that they know what they're getting into. I have yet to purchase a home, and I'm looking to do so I'm very excited about that. But I feel like if you're building a home, that's a whole other set of issues to contend with than if you're just buying one that's already on the market. So so those are the types of things that I think if the language can kind of more clarify, just to make sure that we are clear in like who we want to target, how they would get the benefit, and then also making sure that those people who do end up getting the home are able to still maintain it and take care of it. Because I've heard from a lot of folks that they find, some of those requirements that we require in other programs really beneficial and really helps them down the road in the long term. So there's not really a question there, I'm sorry, Chair, but that's kind of the final comment, I think, of things to kind of think about as this potentially goes forward and figuring out the best way to clarify who we're looking for to make sure that the benefit actually ends up with them.
Dang it, I'll just tail off that. We don't always need to have a question. Sometimes collaboration is what makes bills better, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. So thank you for those.
Yeah,
Unite?
thank you, Chair and
Myers?
and Representative. No, I appreciate that. I'm really trying to find that sweet spot of that, public-private partnership to get those builders to, invest those dollars that they do have in those homes. So if we incentivize them, they can then go and be a resource like those education classes to go and find those new people, to expand their net, talk to more people, so that people can, see the diversity of income and options that are out there. So.
Lead Howard?
Thank you, Chair Igo. Representative Myers. Couple questions. One, have you talked with the Department of Revenue yet about this bill, got their perspective, and sort of a follow-up there? Obviously, a bill like this will have some kind of cost. Has there been a revenue submission to ascertain the cost of this bill?
Representative Myers?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lead Howard. We have requested a fiscal note. With this amendment, I think it's really going to bring that dollar amount down, because we want to make this something, we know what our budget is. And I think we want to spend it wisely, and we want to spend it on different avenues, again, to create different options. I'm still waiting to get that back. I do believe they sent something 15 or 20 minutes ago, but I'm just not sure that's in regards to the new amendment with the dollar amount. So it's something we are still proceeding with before, hopefully is going to taxes, but before it goes to taxes, so that we have that information.
Lead Howard?
Thank you. And you've covered this a little bit, but when reading the first bill and then reading the amendment, I still want to understand the goal in terms of like how you would see this playing out practically. So is the idea that builder would, build a home, that's the first step, and then in the second step, first-time home buyer would come along, find this home, working with the realtor, what have you, purchase it, and then there's some sort of after-the-fact conversation with the original builder? Or are you envisioning, first-time home buyer has a relationship with the builder, they work together to produce this home kind of at the beginning? I'm just trying to understand how you sort of see this practically playing out.
Representative Myers?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Howard. I think it's a little bit of both. Depending on the income range, this could be somebody that goes out and finds a builder and makes it happen, so that you're getting those people to start early in building a house, kind of why we have a little bit longer time frame on there. But at the same time, we'd also like to see some of these home builders, invest their dollars right away to produce that inventory that we're so desperately needing. I don't know what the numbers is, if it's, 10,000. Some of my calculations say, if you build 1,000 houses at $400,000, it's going to give a savings of roughly, $8,500 per person, which, leads you to about a $8-9 million cost. But I think, back to your question, I think you can look at it a little bit as both opportunities.
Lead Howard?
Thanks, Chair Igo. With the amendment, and there was some reference to Mr. Foster about lines 1.14, 1.15, the idea here is to pass the savings on to the home buyer. And so I guess my question there is, if this is truly to be a pass-through to the home buyer, how do you sort of envision this incentivizing on the building side? And I guess a follow-on, if the idea is let's make it a little more affordable for a first-time home buyer to buy a home, why not just sort of provide the benefit directly to the first-time home buyer versus sort of the couple steps we have here?
Representative Myers?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. So to me, it all goes back to that housing inventory. for not getting those, outside dollars and those people that have those dollars to build it. I think that's one avenue that leads us away from fulfilling, the need to create more supply. I think the way this is set up is that a builder could build it if they find somebody that's a first-time home buyer. It's going to bring, expand their pool a little bit more to pass that savings on. But I also think that they're also going to, help them with other avenues to say, yep, we're going to invest this money now, and we're going to, spread our incentive out to people that we know, friends, family, those education pieces that the state has already to find more people to be willing to, buy these first-time home.
Lead Howard?
Thank you, Trago. Representative, just a last comment, and thank you for answering the questions and being transparent that there's still a work in progress here in the bill. Of course, no arguments for me that housing supply and producing affordable starter homes is a need. But I would, if the goal is to help builders build starter homes in a little more affordable way, I think there's other ways to do that, and ways that don't actually cost state tax money, which could be a hefty price tag here. And so would encourage us to continue to look for those ways, but appreciate that you have a bill here that is designed to target what is a real problem, that it's a real challenge for first-time home buyers to find a home. But because of those dynamics and the fact that we don't know the cost here, I'm going to recommend a no vote from our side here on this bill at this time. But again, thanks for the discussion.
Thank you, Lead Howard. And I did see a few more hands come up, but just because our lead spoke, it's fine if you guys want to go on the next bill, since it's similar, we'll just start it over. I mean, they're basically the same bills, just two different things. So closing comments on this bill, though, I just want to say, because I was listening to this conversation that was being had, is that I think when you're working on where it's going to be different is greater Minnesota versus metro Minnesota, right? Down in the metro, there's going to be larger developers that are going to have more of these starter homes available. It might work differently than maybe the neck of the woods where myself and like Representative Scraba are from, where, it might be a first-time home buyer who's finally saved up enough money to work with the local builder in their community of 2,000 to make this happen. So I appreciate Representative Myers working on this bill. It's got a lot of work left ahead of it, but I think it's accomplishing that goal that this committee is looking for, is an all the above way that we can find ways to lower the cost of housing and fix this problem that isn't red or blue. So with that, seeing no more further discussion, I renew my, sorry, you're right. Representative Myers, closing comments.
No,
Apologize.
No, thank you, Chair. I just, we're all in this committee for a reason. We all have, concerns about housing, and all forms of housing, and bringing those options and opportunities are really important. There's no silver bullet. The tools that we can provide for many different buyers is really important. This may be a new program for Minnesota, but there are other states that are using this program, and they've been successful. Georgia, Colorado, Texas, California, and a few states are also looking right now, as far as Tennessee, Florida. I do think that this, again, is going to bring, I'm talking about both bills, that diversity of housing and options to people, because it's going to build more family homes. It's going to incentivize builders to get in there, and then it's going to also provide, we want to get that age down. I mean, 38. Something like this, I think, can help younger people and families and starter families getting into a home. So I would recommend a yes vote.
Thank you, Representative Myers. So seeing no further discussion, then I renew my motion that House File 177 be referred to the Committee on Taxes. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Yeah. Next bill on the agenda, then, back to you, Representative Myers. House File 178, I believe you have an author's amendment for this one as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have an author's amendment. As previously stated, this amendment is changing the dollar amount. It's changing the notice requirements for, the builders to pass the savings along to the homeowners. Specific to this bill, this is for duplexes and triplexes. Again, trying to build that diversity of housing options, and I would ask members to support this.
Any discussion to the A1 amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted. 2-year bill as it now sits. Representative Myers.
Yeah, again, members, thank you for hearing this. I do want to, again, thank nonpartisan staff for their work on this. We are still looking at that reporting part of it, but this bill is pretty much exactly the same as the last one. It's just focusing on those duplexes and triplexes. Multifamily is really important. MHP kind of gave me this idea in the fact that I didn't have it last year, and I want to, again, one of the pillars for us is diversity of housing. I think this is a good option and opportunity, so I'd ask members to support it.
Thank you, Representative Myers. And I believe you don't have any testimony for this one, but if there's any members of the public that wish to testify. All right, seeing none, we'll go into member discussion, and we'll start with the list from last time. So Representative Kozlowski.
Great. Thanks, Chair Igo and Rep. Myers for bringing these forward. I agree just with the sentiments of doing anything we can to spur more housing production. Love to hear multifamily in the mix. My question has to do around the stipulation of kind of how long the owner occupant has to live in the building. Let's see, I found it on, the first bill was line 1.12. I just highlighted it in this one. I don't know where I put it. 178. Oh, yeah. So it says to qualify, the first-time home buyer must own and occupy at least one unit of the housing. This is line 1.13 to 1.14. And just curious in terms of, one of the concerns is folks coming into our communities and just flipping homes. And so if you've thought about like safeguards to put in to ensure that that doesn't mean they just turn around and sell that and then be reflected in the listing price, and then they can go and sell it, flip it, and then increase the price. Thanks.
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Kozlowski. Great point. What I was trying to do with that piece was thinking in these multifamily, not if we build these, the opportunity to find 3 first-time home buyers at the same time once they're built to fill them all together. That's why I just put that one piece on there, that it would just be one of the units. I would have to look at the definitions within the section to see if that's covered. I don't know if nonpartisan wants to phone a friend here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair and Representative Kozlowski. So for I think to address your question, there isn't anything in the language that requires the home buyer to stay for a certain amount of time. And then to Representative Myers' point, for the multifamily units, the duplexes and triplexes are not defined specifically in here, but I think that would probably just be like the commonality of the phrase. And the first-time home buyer would just have to occupy one of those units for the exemption to apply.
Representative Kozlowski.
Yeah, and Chair, this bill will is being referred on to taxes.
Correct.
And I'm on taxes, so just to say I'd love to continue the conversation, and it'll be coming to the next committee, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Myers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. I understand. We want to make sure that, in my communities, they're not big fans of the short-term rentals and people coming in and taking advantage of what we're trying to do and the people that we're trying to help. So I would love to work with you on that.
Right, next on the list is, make sure I read, Representative Momanji Hildsley, right? Or is that
Close. Momani Hildsley. Thank you, Chair Ugo.
I'll get better, I promise.
Ego. I just want to make sure I get that right? I just want to get back to you.
Touche, Representative.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Glad we can laugh. Thank you, Representative Myers. I just have a simple question. While I was comparing the two bills, maybe I missed it. Does the tax exemption apply solely to the construction phase, or does it expand to the materials and labor costs? Do we know?
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just go, thank you, Representative, so I don't get the name wrong, sorry. Yeah, so it's only for construction material. Labor is separate. We want to ensure we're not, messing with wages or any stuff like that.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. None.
All right, next on the list then will be Representative Kabaja.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I had a couple more questions when you were talking about the previous bill, and then it sort of relates to this bill too. So can you help me understand kind of how, I think you explained that it would be the buyers who'd kind of be working, or the builders who would be working with trying to find buyers, whether they built out a community, or as Chair Igo was saying before, that maybe it's an individual person who has a relationship with a buyer. But I'm a little bit trying to understand what is the actual incentive if the buyer or if the builder who's buying the construction materials is the one who's going to receive the tax exemption on the first pass. What's the incentive for them to actually pass those savings along to the buyer? Is there something in the language or how do you see that part playing out?
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. The only way for the builder to get that would be to get that verification from the first-time home buyer on that, and then they would have to submit that documentation to the department to get reimbursed for it.
Okay.
Representative Kabaja.
Okay, so there's so you anticipate there's a form then that would qualify them to be able to receive that tax exemption. And so I guess then that goes to my other question. Is this, so it sounds like then it's probably more of a front-end exemption maybe? Or is it's on the back end still? Okay, all right. And I just remember from conversations with my time on the the Tax Expenditure Review Commission, that I know that the Department of Revenue, sometimes it's hard to quantify, I guess, all the people who take that exemption sometimes. Am I correct in that, or is that a different type of tax exemption I'm thinking of?
Mr. Chair and Representative Agbaji, so it's kind of the opposite.
Okay.
When the exemption is refundable, as these are, the person who can claim the refund has to submit receipts and say, I qualify, and then DOR sends them a check reimbursing them for the sales tax. And so it is a little bit easier for DOR to track when the exemption is refundable.
Okay.
But when it's upfront, it's more difficult for them to track. So it's kind of the opposite of what.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
Representative Kabaja.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, Ms. Hagler. Yeah, I think, again, for this one too, I still want some of more of those finer details, right? To really make sure that it's very clear, what's happening. And then someone can kind of figure out okay, if I either enter into a relationship with a builder or I buy into this, new development property that's been created, exactly what they'll be getting back and how much and how that relates to the price of the final product, et cetera, all that type of stuff. And I know all that can't be super spelled out in language, but I think it might be helpful just because if it does, if this does become something that really helps more people qualify and have access to homes, I just want them to be really clear about it and be clear about what they're getting, especially if they do decide to go into a new development or enter into a relationship with a builder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Senator Myers.
Representative. I think, we're on the same page. We want this to be transparent. We want to make sure that those disclosures are apparent for the buyer so that they are ensuring that they're getting that, the benefit from it.
All right, next on the list will be Representative Hussein.
Representative Meyer, thank you. I see what you're trying to do, but I'm trying to have one question to ask is how will this taxes exemption impact local government and budget public service that relying on the revenues, tax revenue? Is it going to impact any local government or any
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative.
that
So-
rely on revenues and
Yeah, so initially, this is going to be, something that won't decline state revenue right away because it's going to be paid for by the builder. It's then going to be slowly, refunded back to people as these houses are built. So you're not going to have a dramatic impact right away. I don't know if you wanted to.
maybe
Mr. Chair and Representative Hussein, so this would be a general fund impact. There wouldn't be an impact at the local level, and, it wouldn't affect anything like local government aid or county program aid like that. The tax exemption would apply to locally assessed taxes. So if cities have a local tax or like the metro area taxes, those would see a revenue reduction, but those go just fund certain projects and whatnot locally. But I think to your point about local aid, there wouldn't be an effect on local aid.
Representative Hussein.
So I'm trying to follow out where the revenue will come from and how it would be generated. Is it each year or like?
Mr. Chair and Representative Hussein, so yes, it'd be a general fund impact every year of the exemption, and there's a sunset date of 2033. So this exemption is temporary and would only be in effect for 8 or so years. And so to the extent that there are builders making the qualifying purchases and home buyers qualifying to enter the home, there would be a revenue reduction to the general fund when those refunds of the sales tax go out to the builders.
Any follow-up, Representative Hussein?
Well, thank you.
All right, next on the list is Representative Norris.
Thank you, Chair Igo, and thank you, Representative Myers, for bringing these bills forward. I'll save my grilling for the Taxes Committee.
I know you will.
Today, I've got a question just more out of curiosity. I'm wondering why you decided to split single-family homes and multifamily into separate bills.
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Norris. So I had this bill last year for single-family homes, and as I said, it was, I can't remember her last name, but Libby with MHP that came and said, I think this is a really good idea if you could do it for multifamily. And I said, oh, makes sense to me. And so for me, it was getting outside of, what maybe my district, has and looking at how it can impact other people either in other suburban areas, in the metro, in greater Minnesota. And so that's what led to it.
Representative Norris.
Okay.
All right, next on the list is Representative Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question that I am wondering about. I'm wondering if you considered income targeting for the home buyer at all when you were considering this bill. I'm still thinking about how do we make sure we're getting the starter home variety. Because somebody potentially, if they had, high income, could build the home they want and then decide to just use this tax benefit to then build an even more expensive home, like going from 700 to 800,000 because they know they're getting some of that money back. So just wondering if you thought about income targeting at all for limiting who could access this.
Representative Myers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. And that's why, I took that research of the, the average cost of a house in the suburbs, and I tried to start from there because I want to try to, see what the impact is for people. But, it doesn't mean that we're not going to focus on, $400,000, $300,000 houses, but we all know it's expensive to build a house. I think we saw some statistics here of what a 1,600 square foot house looks like to build. So I just wanted to make sure that it was within a level that we can actually build a home for families. If we're hearing 38 years old. I look at myself. It's different for everybody. Got married at 30. 2 incomes. What a 38-year-old family, looks like. If they have kids, the size, those are some of the considerations that we're taking in.
All right, then I think there's no more questions. Lead Howard, if you had anything.
I don't have much to add. It's sort of in the same place as the previous bill. Appreciate that there's work that's continuing, but without more information on sort of revenue estimates in particular, I think there are better policy ways to get at some of these issues. So at this time, I would recommend a no vote.
All right, again, I'll thank Representative Myers for bringing this forward. Again, this all of the above approach, looking at ways that we can try and find things to do. But with that, Representative Myers, I'll let you make some closing comments on your bill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Great conversation here. And again, we all have a passion, and our districts are all very different. We're looking for different options and opportunities, and this is just one to explore along with many that we'll continue to look at, discuss. And again, I would ask members to support it. Thank you.
With that, I re-renew my motion that House File 178 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion prevails, and it's on its way to taxes. All right, members, thank you for a quick committee hearing today. We'll be back tomorrow. We have two bills on the agenda from Representative Howard and Representative Frazier. We'll be going over those. Again, please be reaching out and talking with each other about further ideas and stuff we can be working on in committee. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your evening. We are adjourned.